Imagine this. You finally find the perfect apartment. It's in your budget, it's clean, the size works, and it's in a great location, but you've got to share it with a roommate. No big deal until she shows up at your front door holding a shovel in one hand and a dead animal in the other. No explanation, no panic, just standing there smiling, asking if you want to help her bury it. Stunned, you say, "No, you hardly even know this person. What happened to that animal anyway?" You close the door, and by morning, you find it buried in a potted plant right outside your bedroom door. You might think that's bad, but it's not the worst story. It's just a highlight of one of the 4 roommates from hell I'm introducing you to in today's video. Each one was a near miss, and the signs were all there. So let's talk about the cases that could have almost been on an episode of Dateline. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. You might know me from my true crime channel here on YouTube, Kimbyrleigha. I am Kimbyrleigha, or Kimbyr, and this is Candidly Kimbyr. And on this channel, we'll be diving into some of the most creepy and interesting real life stories from around the web, mostly focusing on one of my favorite places, Reddit. And today we're diving into some of the craziest stories about roommates from hell. And I'm already cringing because I've never liked having roommates, and maybe you've never had any issues. But after hearing these stories, I can guarantee you're probably going to want to live all alone. This first story is from the Bad Roommates subreddit, and since we've never ventured into this one before, let's read the description. Bad roommates, tales of irritation. Give us your tales of bad roommates, the gross, the annoying, the psychotic. And if you have the solution to bad roommates, please let us know. The first story is titled, "My Creepy Roommate Had an Obsession with Me," and it's from poster Unique Inflation 238. Now, she gave some context, which I'm going to summarize to get us up to speed. She now jokes about this situation, but she wonders if her old roommate had a weird obsession with her. She's an 18-year-old female and had a lot of trouble as a teenager. She ran away from home when she was 17. She bounced around to family, partners, and friends' houses, and finally was able to find a cheap room in a 6-bedroom house. Even though it was in a kind of dodgy neighborhood, she was the first to move in, and she liked that because there were no other roommates at the time. But she wrote, about a week later, someone else moved in. This was a 2-story house, 2 bedrooms downstairs, 4 bedrooms upstairs. I lived downstairs, she upstairs. Downstairs had a bathroom, laundry, and kitchenette, so there was never any reason for me to go upstairs, which I was happy with because I have really bad anxiety, and I was trying to interact with others as least as possible. Same. However, she said one night, the roommate knocked on my bedroom door and introduced herself to me. Let's call her Daisy, and she was 23. She told me she just moved to our town from another state by herself to go to the university in our town. It was the only uni in town, and I also attended it. I thought that would be all, and we would just live our separate lives. That was until she would keep knocking on my door at different times to talk to me. I tried to be nice, but I'm a really introverted person, and something about her made me really uncomfortable. At the time, I was working crazy hours as a manager at a fast food restaurant to support myself. Particularly, I worked the closing shifts where sometimes I wouldn't get out until 2 a.m. and would have to attend 8 a.m. classes. I let Daisy know that I work late shifts and asked her not to knock on my door early in the morning because I needed to sleep. She would do this anyway. And it's not like she would knock and if she didn't hear a response, leave me alone. No. She would bang on my door and call out to me until I would open the door, just to ask me a stupid question, whether that be a general question about our town that she could have Googled or small talk, which was unnecessary. Do you ever do that? Because I know that I've been asked something that I'm really no expert in, and I probably would have to look up myself, and I'd say, I'll totally help you. And then I'll repeat their question out loud while typing it into my phone saying like, hey, Google, what time is sunset today? I don't know. Am I the a-hole? Also, I thought it would be helpful to include red flags in this type of story. So I'm going to list the ones that I noticed, but please, if I miss any, let me know in the comments. But red flag number 1, ignoring a basic boundary like sleep is a boundary test. Like, how much access can I demand? And that's definitely not a good sign. The poster went on to say, then it would seem like she would be waiting for me to come home from places. The door to the downstairs was on the ground level, facing the driveway. Next to that door were a set of stairs to enter upstairs. Whenever I came home from class or if I had an opening shift at work, she would be sitting at the base of those steps, jumping up to talk to me as I would approach the door. Like I said, I tried to be nice and just nod along as I would try to make it not obvious that I was slowly inching to the door. I didn't want to cause trouble with someone I was living with. A few other people moved in, and I never really talked to any of them, and they didn't try to talk to me. It was great. I kept thinking, did Daisy perhaps just want to make a new friend? But maybe I'm speaking too soon, so let's continue. She said Daisy lived in the master bedroom upstairs and had a window that faced the driveway. Multiple times I nearly shit myself when I would walk up to the driveway, and she would be standing at the window, smiling at me, waiting for me to notice her before she would wave frantically. I would give a polite smile before walking faster towards the door before she could run down the stairs to talk to me. I'm going to go with red flag number 2 because when coincidences, I'm doing air quotes, coincidences keep lining up, it starts to feel intentional. And this feels like monitoring at this point, and that's creepy. The poster went on to say, but the biggest thing that creeped me out was when she showed up at my work asking for me. The fast food place that I worked at had 11 different locations in our town, and I never mentioned which location I worked at. I didn't even work at any of the locations that were near where I lived. I worked at one on the other side of town where I used to live. So did she show up at multiple different locations asking for me? She didn't even know my full name. I only introduced myself by my nickname, which I prefer to be called, which was just a shortened version of my first name. Okay, now I agree. That's a little weird. She wrote, I had been on break when my coworker came up to me and said that a family member was at the counter asking for a discount. Now, we were allowed to give our personal 40% discount to family for small orders. I had been confused because usually someone would text me first if they were coming to make an order to check if I was even on my shift. My heart sank when I saw Daisy at the counter. Not only did she show up at my work lying, saying she was family, but also had the audacity to ask me for a discount. Yikes. Now, see, I was going to give her the benefit of the doubt until I heard more, but I really feel like these are not good signs. And OP said, I took her order, and because she legitimately instilled an unsettling feeling in me, I gave her the discount. But I told her I would not be able to do this again. The whole time she waited for her order, she stared at me intensely. I hid in the cold room to avoid her gaze, and multiple of my coworkers came to ask me if the customer was making me uncomfortable or anything like that. And I mentioned, she's my housemate, and it was a bit weird. When it was time to take her order out, everyone else was busy doing something, so I had to take it to her. When she took it from me, her hand lingered on mine for too long to be normal. I gave a polite smile and told her to have a nice night, and she said goodbye. And then she stood there, staring at me expectantly. I wasn't sure, so I said goodbye back, and she nodded in approval before turning to leave. Before she walked out the door, she turned around again and said goodbye with a creepy smile. Yeah, I'm going to go with categorizing the unwanted show up at work as red flag number 3, because showing up at someone's workplace without being told where they work takes effort. And effort is, again, it's intent. It's not just creepy, but it's concerning. And OP said, as soon as she left, my coworkers all commented on her weird behavior and asked if she was obsessed with me or something. Now, older people I knew who I would talk to her behavior about would reference the movie Single White Female. And I had no idea what it was about, but they mentioned it was about an obsessive roommate and that situations like that would end in violence. I kind of brushed it off and just tried to avoid her as much as possible. It was times like that I was ecstatic that I only had a 6 months lease. So I'm going to say red flag number 4, I know so soon, but when someone keeps forcing an interaction after repeatedly telling them no or that you're uncomfortable and making it clear, and they keep doing this, it stops being social and it starts to become a form of control. Back to OP. One evening, I had been in my bedroom as usual when I heard yelling from outside the door downstairs. I just ignored it or thought maybe one of the other roommates would address it, but it continued getting louder. And then there was banging on the door. When I listened closer, I recognized it to be her voice, Daisy. I opened the door, and she was standing there with a dead possum in one hand and a shovel in the other. And I was thinking, that is so random, but it's also really strange and unsanitary. Now, is the whole possum, opossum still up for debate? I don't know. But she said, I asked her where she got that and why she was yelling, and she wouldn't answer me directly and just asked over and over again to help her bury it. And I said no, and that she shouldn't even be touching it. No idea what diseases it might have. And I told her, call animal control or something that could take care of the body, but she kept saying no. Other housemates came out to see what was going on, and I just slinked away. The next morning, when I walked out, I noticed a foul smell. I noticed a lump in the soil of a potted plant that I had outside the door. It was the effing dead possum. She buried the dead effing possum outside my door. What the actual F? While gagging, I threw the whole plant away, not knowing what else to do. Did she find the possum dead, or did she do something to it? I don't know, and I don't want to know. Wait. So I hope I'm understanding this right. When the OP says she buried the dead possum in the house plant outside the door, they live in a 6-bedroom house. So here I am assuming that outside her door was inside the house in a house plant. Am I not understanding that correctly? But either way, what the hell? And there's more. She said, yet the final straw was when I woke up to missed calls and emails from our landlord, warning us that one of the other housemates reported the gas stove had been left on all night, and for no one to try to use it or ignite anything until they could get someone to ensure the gas was all cleared out. The last person seen using the stove had been Daisy. I immediately started looking for other living options. I was able to organize with a good friend that we would move into a 2-bedroom rental home together. I wasn't able to break my lease, but I also couldn't stand to live there for the rest of my lease. So I used some of the money from my tax return to pay off the rest of the rent in advance, 2 months worth, and slowly moved out so my landlord or Daisy wouldn't notice. All I have to say is about that gas. Now I'm assuming that Daisy left on the gas, but not the actual burner. I have a gas stove too. And if you leave it on and you don't push the light button, the gas will keep coming out. And if you do light a match or even sometimes light another burner, it could cause an explosion or even a fire. Definitely, I won't even say more than a red flag. This is dangerous, but red flag number 5, when your home becomes a safety hazard, you deciding to leave isn't overreacting. This is risk management. Obviously, I do have my thoughts, but let's go to the comments. The top one was just WTF. And I'm thinking same. Goopy Sam said, this is psycho. Internal Dilemma said, that's a crazy story and I'm glad you got out okay. Side note, you're a great writer. That story had me on the edge of my seat. And I just want to say, I find that a lot of people on Reddit write really well. And that's why I'm a big fan of finding stories there and talking about them. A couple people did say they were so glad that she got out. And I agree. It definitely does seem like this was escalating behavior, especially since Daisy realized that the OP wasn't interested in being friends, but another person kind of made a joke that OP should just make sure to give Daisy her forwarding address just in case mail comes to the house for her. But it kind of isn't funny when you are dealing with this type of situation. So here's my verdict, so to speak, after hearing the whole thing. This doesn't sound like a roommate that's lonely or chatty or just wants a friend. It seemed like escalating fixation. We're talking sleep boundaries being violated, the waiting and the watching and the tracking at her workplace, and then just this unpredictable, unsafe behavior. Her discomfort wasn't drama. It was a pattern recognition. And if this was my friend, the goal would not even be to figure out Daisy. It would be minimize contact, document everything, and get out safely. Keeping an incident log of like dates and times and what happened, and at least telling one trusted friend what's going on, and even writing the landlord or the property manager about these issues. If she shows up at your work again, you would tell a manager, or you could even call the cops. So I feel like it's your turn to leave in the comments. When would you have switched to getting an exit plan? A, the morning door banging after you told her to stop. B, the work pop-in, just showing up and claiming that she's family. Or C, the possum and the gas stove safety hazard. Let me know A, B, and C in the comments and tell me what the tipping point would be for you. For this next story, it's from the Let's Not Meet subreddit. There's lots of gems in there. It's called My Creepy Roommate, and it's by Russ Miranda. And it goes like this. I had been having problems with my dorm roommate since the beginning of the semester. She didn't shower or wash her clothes regularly and left dry top ramen noodles all over the floor for me to step on. And that sounds almost worse than Legos, and Legos are forbidden in my home. But OP said she didn't wash her hands or flush the toilet, and she would sigh in a way that sounded like sex noises constantly. And she would shower with the door open and got water everywhere. So many more things that I hated. Basically, every single pet peeve I had was born in this girl. At first, I blamed it on her not understanding American etiquette. She's a foreign exchange student from China. And I just have to say, my husband, John, is my witness. Those are my pet peeves too, and I'm sure there's some of yours, especially the water on the floor when showering. I don't get it. I have a rug, I have a mat, and I always put down a towel before stepping out so my socks will not get wet once I put them on. But I want to continue, but I am getting triggered by all these pet peeves. OP wrote, but then things started to get creepy. When I went home for the weekend, a few weeks into the semester, I gave her a heads up that I would be gone, and she did that weird sex sigh again and looked sad and betrayed at the same time, like I was doing something wrong by leaving her. She said something along the lines of, "Why are you leaving me? I don't like sleeping in the room by myself. I feel more comfortable when you're here with me." Mind you, I only met this chick on move-in day and only said a few words to her. I should have known to keep my guard up after that. Every once in a while, she would stare off into space longingly for half an hour. Sometimes I would catch her watching me study out of the corner of my eye. After a long day of studying the library, I went to the patio in our dorm to get some ice from the machine and found her with her head on the table with her eyes wide open, staring at something in the distance. I think she scared off the guy I like because he stopped coming around once he found out that she was my roommate. After she creeped me out so much, I started staying away from my dorm, only going to sleep and grab things I needed. She seemed like a nice person, but I couldn't live with her anymore. But OP, does she really sound like a nice person, or is the OP the nice person and trying to look at the best in this very weird roommate? I'm going to say red flag number 1. When someone starts avoiding their own room just to feel normal, the situation has already crossed into, this is affecting my daily functioning, which is not okay. But she went on to write, today, I emailed my RD that I wanted a room change. I told her I wasn't comfortable living in my dorm anymore with this girl. I was sitting in my room while my roommate was out today when I hear a banging on the door. I was greeted by 2 solemn-looking police officers from campus and my RD of my building. They calmly asked me where my roommate was, but I had no idea. I told them her usual lurking spots and went back to what I was doing. I knew something was off. I asked them what was up, and they just ignored my question and asked where she might have been. The police officers at my campus are usually really pleasant looking too, since there isn't much crime at my campus and they don't have much to do. 30 minutes later, I hear banging on my door again. I'm greeted by my roommate, who has tears streaming down her face. She rushes past me to the bed and plops down, and she starts wailing, screaming, and hyperventilating, and I thought maybe someone close to her had died. And I was feeling sorry that I asked for a room change during her time of need. I could only make out a few bits and pieces of what she was trying to say to the RD. Things like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I promise I won't do it again." The police officer pulled me aside and quietly asked me if there was anything in that room she could hurt herself with. I gestured to her drawer where I know I've seen a small knife with a wooden sheath on occasion. He went through the drawer, but didn't find anything. Suddenly, she was right behind him screaming, "Don't you dare go through my things!" The police said, "We don't want you to harm yourself. Please calm down." But before he could finish, she interrupted with, "You think I'm going to harm my roommate? I wouldn't do that. She's just silly. I'm not going to hurt anyone. I just want to be left alone." By then, the RD dragged me out of the room and told me what was going on. She got into a big fight with her best friend. I didn't think she had any, and started sending her threatening emails and even threatened to self-exit. By this time, I was in complete shock. I just saw someone completely lose it right in front of me. My RD told me that she had received my room change and was going to meet with me tomorrow. I told her I would stay with a friend for the night. After my roommate calmed down a bit, I went into the room where the two RDs were talking to her to quickly pack a night bag. She apologized for acting so crazy, and I half-heartedly accepted, grabbing my shit, and I got out of there. I was waiting in my dorm common area for my friend to get back to her dorm when I realized I forgot a blanket. I went inside thinking that someone was going to be in that room keeping an eye on her, but she was alone. She glared at me as I walked past her to grab my blanket. There was pure hatred in her eyes. She's like, "Where are you going?" I've never heard this tone of voice before, and she was livid. OP said, "I'm going to stay with my friend for the night." She asked, "Why? Because of me?" I swear I saw smoke rising from the top of her head and a vein in her forehead was about to burst. I said, "Sleepover," in the happiest tone I could muster. She said, "We have a midterm on Friday," which wasn't completely untrue, and I'm just glad I was quick on my feet. I have to butt in and say red flag number 2. The switch from clingy and odd to hostile and accusatory, especially when OP is trying to leave. This is escalation. It's rage, it's entitlement, and it's where safety concerns get real. Plus, I feel like there's 2 red flags here because when a living situation escalates to campus police and in a complete safety assessment going on, this officially is past the awkward roommate drama and it's now a safety situation. OP said, I got out of there and nearly ran to my friend's dorm. I talked to the RD and there were no open rooms in my housing complex. And if I wanted to move to another complex, my parents would have to pay an extra $1,000. They were furious and want me to move immediately because the police officer was incompetent. He jeopardized my safety by asking me that question in front of her. They don't want to pay for me to change rooms because it was my university's fault for putting me in this awkward situation. I'm just afraid that she's going to take this out on me. I do not think I can return to my dorm. She looked like she was out for blood when I came back. Wow. This is actually a pretty intense situation because you have to think of this young person. I mean, they're in college, and this is another red flag. When the options are you have to pay extra or you have to live with someone that's so unpredictable who now could hate her, that's not a personal inconvenience. This is a toxic situation, and the roommate has caused these issues. So I almost feel like you should not have to pay for this. But let's go to the comments. The top comment was from Turing Tested, and they said, I know you're not asking for advice, but you need to write up what happened in a respectful email and send it to the director of housing and CC your RA and the director of the RAs. If you live in a semi-private complex, write the manager as well. Often the only way to get things done is to bring it to the attention of multiple people. You shouldn't live anywhere you feel unsafe, and you certainly shouldn't be charged $1,000 to move. And I agree. It's not even her problem. Why should she have to take the penalty? Because it's a failure of the school, the way that I see it, because it's a dorm, it's not an apartment, and she should feel safe. Another commenter echoed that, and I'm going to summarize it because it was really long, but they pointed out that if a person had a record of threatening harm on themselves or on others, which they do now have that record because of the police involvement in the emails, she should be removed. The roommate should be placed in a room alone, or she should have to leave until they figure out what's going on. All in all, what they were saying is that the OP should not have to pay because they have to leave, and there was an update. The OP did move out the very next day, and they didn't care about the extra charge. And now she has great roommates, and The issue roommate is in counseling. However, OP did have to go back to pack up her things with the issue roommate still there. And they kept asking her question after question. Did housing ask you to leave? Why are you being so cold now to me? You weren't like this before. You don't like me anymore, do you? It's because of what happened last night, isn't it? Can you tell me what I did to be a bad roommate so I don't make the same mistakes again? What happened last night scared you off, didn't it? It was like this over-the-top, accusatory, patronizing, and mocking the OP several times. And I am glad that this person got out of there. My verdict about the whole situation is that this isn't just a gross roommate or a personal clash. According to the original poster, this is fixation, it's entitlement, and it was getting to a volatile situation. And once the campus police are involved and the roommate is spiraling in a space that they're sharing together, I feel like the fear that the OP had is not irrational. Her discomfort wasn't judgment, it's a safety signal. And if this was my friend, the goal wouldn't be wait and see if she calms down. It would be documentation again, documenting everything, escalation, and then going up the chain of command and documenting everything until your grievance is not ignored but taken care of. And I would even request maybe emergency accommodations because you have to be safe. I also would not have gone back there alone. I would have brought a friend with me, even to just retrieve items, even campus security. They can escort you there. Again, I want to hear from you. When would you have gone into your exit plan? A, the weekend guilt moment when she was being clingy and saying like, don't leave me. B, the staring and watching and lurking behavior. Or C, the campus police visit. Let me know in the comments. And yes, I'm keeping it to 3 choices to make it easy, but of course, elaborate. And if you've had a situation like this, of course, leave it below so I can read it and share with the class. But let's keep moving because I found so many of these stories. I think I could have done 3 more videos and some of them were even worse than these and they escalated to an even higher degree. But even these are pretty crazy. And you know, if you've watched me before, I go from the least to the worst. So this next one I'm categorizing as even worse than the 2 before. But there's a lot more where these came from. The next one is in the Let's Not Meet subreddit, and it's entitled Creepy Craigslist Roommate by poster Mac1187. And I'm thinking, is Craigslist still around? I haven't been on it in so long. But OP wrote, when I was 21, I transferred to a college in San Francisco. I checked out a room for rent on Craigslist. It was in a really nice 2-bedroom apartment. It was cheap and close to campus, so it was an ideal spot. The girl who lived there was 29 and her name was Beth. She was tall and wide and had jet black hair and wore pale makeup. She seemed nice, although a little quiet, but she seemed to like me and agreed to let me move in. So far, so good. My first night there, we went out for pizza, and that was when I could tell that something was a little off with her. Throughout dinner, she kept telling me how much I looked like Shia LaBeouf. I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged it off with, thanks? I mean, I look nothing like Shia LaBeouf, so it just didn't make any sense to me. So I know I'm probably not the only one that's experienced this, and I know I can't see most of your profile pictures. It might not even be your face, but you ever get that? When someone's adamant you look like someone else, but you know you don't, and it's kind of frustrating because I've gotten it so many times. I've been compared to someone else that has black hair, let's say, and I'm like, okay, we both have black hair, but there's like no other features about us. I used to get Angelina Jolie a lot when I was really skinny, like way skinnier than I am now. I don't really think I look like anyone else, but back to the story. He said, when we got back home, she asked if I had seen her room yet. And I said no. So she took me to see it. Her walls were covered in posters of Shia LaBeouf. She even had a printed out photo of him on her mirror. She owned all of his movies. I didn't even know what to make of it. It was creepy. The whole night, she'd been saying I look like him, and now it's obvious to me that she's obsessed with the guy. Okay, this is definitely red flag number 1, and I don't want to laugh, but like Shia LaBeouf? When someone instantly tries to cast you into like a celebrity fantasy, especially when you find out they have a shrine level obsession. It doesn't seem like harmless teasing, like, oh, you look so much like Shia LaBeouf. No, it's like she's trying to make him fit into her fantasy role. And maybe she was casting roommates. And I just feel like it's a big yikes. But okay, he said, a few weeks passed. And I never really saw her that much. We didn't spend any time together. And she would come home from work and practically run to her room. And she would spend the whole night in there. And she had this really creepy, high-pitched giggle. And I would hear her giggling through the walls at night. And I wondered, what the hell could she be possibly doing in there? Occasionally, she would come out and talk for like 2 minutes. And she would always be slurring her words, so I suspected she was drinking a lot. Sometimes she wouldn't say anything. And she would just stand in the hallway and watch me in the living room. Okay, this is so creepy. I would turn and see her and be surprised and say, hello, Beth. And then there would be this long, awkward pause. And she would give out her creepy, high-pitched giggle. It was uncomfortable being around her. She gave me the chills. And I'm going to say red flag number 2 already, because lingering and silently watching someone, especially with the heavy drinking possibly, this could turn a living space into you constantly being on edge in your own home. And it stops feeling like a neutral space and it starts feeling like there are landmines all around you. And that's not cool. But there's more. He said, one night, I woke up around 2 a.m. because I heard what sounded like the front door being unlocked. I came out of my bedroom and all the lights were off. But I could see Beth standing at the front door. She had her face against it, and she was turning the lock back and forth over and over again. And every time she turned the bolt, she mumbled my name. Max Barker, Max Barker, Max Barker. Seeing her standing in the dark and mumbling my name really freaked me out. And it doesn't help that she kind of looks like a bigger version of the girl from The Ring. I just quietly went back to my room and tried to sleep. And I was thinking, I haven't even seen this girl. And I thought of the girl from The Ring as well. Also, that's red flag number 3. Someone awake at 2 a.m. repeatedly in like a trance-like behavior and, mumbling this person's name. That's scary. That's really unpredictable behavior. And it doesn't stop there. OP goes on to explain, one night, I was watching Gladiator, and she stumbled out of her room, turned on the living room light, and forced me to pause the movie, which was annoying. She then asked me if I wanted to hear about her ex-boyfriend. It was an easy segue into the topic, but I just said, sure, and then awkwardly sat back to listen to her. 10 minutes into her story, and she's so riled up, she was screaming at the top of her lungs about their breakup. I was worried that the neighbors were going to call the police, and she wasn't listening to me when I was asking her to lower the volume. Amidst her screaming, one thing she said really freaked me out. She was in such a fit and yelled, I'll slit his effing throat. I'm saying to myself, run. Get out of there. That's not normal. That's crazy. That's really threatening. But the OP said, that was a big game changer. Suddenly, I had no idea what this girl was capable of. She was practically a stranger, and everything I had seen was becoming alarmingly disturbing. After a few more minutes, she told me thanks for listening, and she started doing her giggle. I got out of there pretty fast, and I went to my room to go to sleep. I had a pretty unsettled feeling about being in the house with her, and what's worse is that there were no locks on my bedroom door. So I pushed the edge of my dresser in front of it to act like a barricade. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of my dresser scraping against the floor. Beth was pushing the door open. I turned on my light, shouting at her to stop. I could see her through the opening of the door, and she was so drunk and had this insane look in her eyes. I pushed the door closed. I yelled at her to go to bed, and I could hear her walk back to her room, but I couldn't fall back to sleep. The next morning, when I went out into the hallway, my heart dropped. I saw one of her steak knives was on the floor by the door. I got goosebumps all over my arms. Okay, that's all I would need to hear. I would be out of there. But that's red flag number 4 for sure. A violent statement, a weapon by the bedroom door, and this nighttime intrusion attempt is not just like a quirky roommate. That's a threshold into danger. She was breaking into this private space. It doesn't matter that it's in a room, in a place you share. It's a violation of privacy. And that's a major, major red flag, more than a red flag. But OP said, all I could think about was her saying that she would slit that guy's throat. I confronted her about it, and she said she didn't remember trying to push my door open. She said she didn't even remember telling me about her ex. I had enough. My lease was month to month, so I found a new spot and I moved out. About a month after I moved out, she contacted me. I was at the movies and my phone was off. When I got out, I turned my phone on and I was shocked that I received 40 plus text messages that she sent me over the past 2 hours. They were all just insane texts and ranged from everything between, hi, how are you, to I effing hate you. It was insane. I didn't respond, and I never heard from her again. I always wonder if I hadn't set my dresser in front of my door, would she have quietly come into my room and slit my throat? It freaks me out. The excessive text messaging, that truly falls into another red flag, but since he got out of there, I think ignoring her was the best thing he could have done. It could have turned out to be way worse, especially because it does seem like she was in some kind of, I'm not making excuses, drunken stupor or like a blackout. Commenter Xanabe said, Craigslist, the gathering place of the creeps, right? Isn't there even a Craigslist killer? I would be way too afraid to find a roommate on a site like that. And I think people do actually go on roommate sites that include background checks nowadays, but I feel like people can still fall through the cracks. One commenter explained what they thought was going on was that those high-pitched giggles from behind the door, she was having imaginary conversations with Shia LaBeouf. And another person was like, yikes, maybe. Who knows? I mean, another person even suggested that maybe she didn't have control over her drinking habits and she was completely out of her mind. And she thought that the roommate was even her ex-boyfriend while she was drunk. If the ex-boyfriend even existed. This is all what the commenter is saying, and I'm agreeing. And right after that, another commenter pointed something out saying, something tells me that her last boyfriend was just a roommate. And now OP will be the new ex-boyfriend in her stories. And I'm thinking, that's totally plausible. She could have been one of those people who got attached really easily and they think they're in a relationship and then it's at this other level when it's really not. Because think about it. This roommate moved out and she was texting him 40 plus text messages. They weren't even living together anymore. So maybe she truly did feel like they had this bond that did not exist. I'm going to tell you from just me being someone who puts my life online, I just put a sliver of my life online and somehow, some way, people feel like they know everything about me and they can't possibly know that much about me because they've never actually been friends with me. So there is that weird like pseudo relationship. I forget what they call it. I think it's a parasocial relationship. And some of that's okay with me. Like I like feeling like we are friends. But when it gets to a level where people are assuming things about me or how I feel or what I'm doing, it kind of does feel like an intrusion. And if I didn't say it, it's probably not really happening. You know, it's kind of like when people are like, oh, are you pregnant? Not to me, but I've seen other posts where like, you look pregnant. Or I just feel like there's a boundary line there. I know we share online. We're still humans. But another person questioned the comment that said that possibly she had no control over her drinking habits. They were like, what does that even mean? Someone explained. It meant she doesn't know when to stop. She doesn't remember things, and she's completely out of her mind because drinking puts her to that point. Because there are people who drink every day and never get drunk or never change their personality, and they don't mutter that they want to kill someone. And it's true. And this is me speaking. There are people who black out. They don't remember anything. They act strange when they're drinking. They have an alter ego. And another person went on to suggest that she could even be on medication or, you know, have mental health issues of some kind, and drinking plus being on meds can interact. And after reading this, My verdict is that this wasn't an eccentric roommate. It wasn't having some kind of celebrity crush or fandom. It sounds like she's choosing roommates based on what they look like to fulfill some kind of weird fixation she has on Shia LaBeouf. It sounds like someone who could actually escalate into more than just a crazed fan, but something like what happened to Selena or other people who've been killed by a fan, which is scary. The heavy drinking mixed with all this, like the boundary violations, that's dangerous. The intrusion, the knife. Even if it's not a direct threat, I think we could assume what could have happened there. Thankfully, OP listened to their intuition, or obviously the red flags. And if this was my friend, the goal wouldn't be to get answers from Beth. It would be to secure an exit quickly and cleanly and to document everything. Always document, by the way. I repeated that in every one of these cases, or I should say stories. But getting out of there, locking the door even, especially when you first move into a place like this, and keep everything in writing. Save all of those text messages. I probably would have even reported this to the police so that there would be a record of her doing something like this. So now to the audience. When would you have left? A, the Shia LaBeouf obsession. When you went into that room and you saw all those posters. B, the 2 a.m. lock turning in the dark and repeating his name. Or C, the story about what she wanted to do to her ex and then finding the knife by the bedroom door. Is there anything you would have done differently, I wonder? Well, now we're at the final story, and it gives me the creeps. It's also from the Bad Roommate subreddit, and it's from poster Smooch. And it goes like this. She wrote, I should start off by stating I am 22 years old and 5 foot, and I'm a woman. About 2 months ago, I was awake smoking around 4 a.m. with my window open when my male housemate, Richard, tried to climb into my window. My room's on the ground level. When I caught him, his excuse was that he lost his key. That obviously was not the case. He could have knocked at the front door or at my other male housemate's window, Roy, which was located next to the front door. I was frozen from fear and only got the confidence to run to my window to close it when he went to go get a chair. He then knocked at my window saying he's locked out. Okay, I'm saying this is very sketchy. I think it deserves a red flag right away. The window incident isn't just awkward. This is access. It's an attempt to get inside. And when someone chooses the most invasive way, her window, over a normal option like knocking on the door or even going to the male roommate, that's testing boundaries to see how she's going to react. She said, he makes me so uncomfortable every day. I have to stop what I'm doing in the kitchen and leave the room when he comes in, as he's very open about staring at my ass, even in public when we cross paths. He does the same thing to my girlfriend, my sisters, and female friends, and some won't even come over because of him. It's very difficult living in constant fear and anger that he's still living in this house. It's made me a very angry person, as I feel so powerless. I feel even more powerless when I see him staring at my girlfriend's ass. He also puts his hands on my girlfriend's waist instead of alerting us when we're in the way of something. I don't like to be touched, so it really messes with my mental health, as I also find it hard to confront people or stand up for myself or voice my concerns or anything. I'm genuinely powerless here. So, wow. Physically touching you or someone else goes beyond staring, and even staring is weird, especially when you've told them to stop and they're obvious about it. I'm going to combine 2 and 3 red flags. Staring, unwanted touching, that's not being cute. It's harassment, especially when it's repeated, it's targeted, and it makes people stop wanting to come over to your place. The poster said, I can't do anything about it. My landlord does not care about sexual predators living in this house, as we had another incident where a male housemate had a hidden peephole in the shower room. He admitted that he has naked photos of me and my female housemate. Nothing was done until the police were involved, but they couldn't do anything as they weren't given the right phone. My landlord and other male housemates was on his side, laughing about the situation. I could hear the entire situation from my room. They even asked to look at the photos on his phone. It was like I've heard the truth about what men really think, as they falsely expressed to me in the past many times how they would protect me and my female housemate if anything were to happen. I have to pretend that I didn't hear my housemate Roy ask to see my naked pictures. And I'm like, okay, this other incident, as you call it, it's more than an incident, it's illegal. And I was going to say, why not move? But she explained that she couldn't move out because she was struggling to pay for rent and her living expenses. She said this was the cheapest place she could find in town, and she had 2 cats. So the opportunity to move out was rare. And that's why she felt so powerless. She said, I know what his intentions were if he got into my room. He looks at me with this certain look, like he knows that he scares me, and he's so confident about it. He doesn't do it to my female roommate. She's older and married, and he's friendly with her husband. I can't do anything legally either. There's just no proof. I have a camera installed inside my room, and it's on 24/7 just in case something else happens. And I was thinking, well, there you go. You have that camera, so you will have proof, but you don't always want to wait till something else happens. And I think the most dangerous setups aren't just one creep. They're environments that protect a creep like this. When the landlord and her other housemate that happens to be a male are minimizing and they're joking about this, that's hostile. The top comment by Jasmine Silk said, please stand up for yourself. No one is coming to rescue or stand up for you. So it's up to you to do that. If not for you, then for your girlfriend. Please consider your boundaries and stick to them. Write him a text about how it isn't okay to try to sneak around through your window at night and get a hide key. And when he stares, say, hey, I see you staring and it's making me uncomfortable. Can you give me some privacy? You absolutely need to speak up if moving out isn't an option. Inform any men in your life too. Have someone come over so he knows you have help if needed. Your lack of will to protect yourself and your partner is noticed, and he will continue. Do more than a camera. And this is me commenting. I didn't realize that she hadn't confronted him. I thought she had already confronted him and told him to stop. I guess I missed that in the original story, but yeah. I mean, if she didn't say anything, he might have thought it was okay, but he knows it's not okay. Now, the OP did respond to that. She said, my friend's stepdad is aware of the situation and they live near, so I have that. Thanks for the reply. You are right that I should have said something, especially when it comes to my girlfriend. I really need to grow a fat pair of balls and just say anything. I just break down crying when anything happens. Writing a letter is doable. There's an option of moving counties as well. Thank you again. Now, when I first read that, I thought it said moving countries. And I was like, wait a minute. I don't think you have to go that far, but even counties, that's doing too much. You shouldn't have to do that much for a person that's doing something like this. And writing a letter, no. I don't think writing a letter to this guy is going to work. And another commenter said exactly what I was thinking. They said, writing a letter to this guy? He would laugh. He would show it around. Speak up the moment he puts his hands on you. Wear an oversized shirt or a loose bathrobe when you're in the house so he can't see your ass. Put locks on your bedroom door and on your window. There are apps that let your phone detect hidden cameras. Sweep your room every day and the bathroom before each use. Save your money so you can leave. And I'm just going to say, isn't that quite a hassle? And I'm like, wait, there's an app for that? I feel like I need to get one of those and do that because that's creepy. I know that people do put hidden cameras, especially like in Airbnbs. We're going to do a story on that. Yes, we are. That is on my list. And it's one that you've submitted to me wanting to hear about hidden cameras. But writing a letter, you are way too kind in my opinion. This guy is beyond that. My verdict is this isn't roommate drama. It isn't awkwardness. It's sexual boundaries being crossed. It's a violation where a man and even your landlord are minimizing this or even participating in the harm because your roommates are laughing and they're not taking it seriously. The window attempt, it wasn't random at all. Staring at you, touching you, they're not accidents. And the powerlessness you feel, that's not you being dramatic and it's not anything wrong with you. This environment is enabling this behavior. And if you were my friend, the goal wouldn't be to prove that you deserve to have a safe place. It would be to get help. And I know that there's cameras and you need to save those clips if there is anything weird going on. but start a log of this. Even if you're just writing it down, it still matters. Put those boundaries in writing to your landlord, your property manager, and I would possibly even tell the police. I do think it's a good idea to always have your own locks on doors when you live in a place like this. But now it's your turn. What would have been your I'm done moment? The 4 a.m. window attempt? Or would it be B, the daily staring and the waist grabbing? Or C, the peephole and the nude photo incident and the housemates laughing about it? This has been a long one, and these ones are creepy in a different way. It was pretty brutal hearing about some of these situations. I feel like they are nightmare situations. I would choose to live alone. I pretty much lived alone my entire life unless I did have a boyfriend, when I was old enough, of course. And when I could move out completely and had the money to, and I felt safe, I would do it. I only had a few roommates, and especially when I was in college, and a couple times, I did have trouble with them. Luckily, I don't have stories that go this far, but anytime I had a roommate, there was always tension of some kind. I remember coming home and a roommate was just moving in another person into the one room that she was renting in my house. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I was a pushover and I didn't say anything. And that ended up causing my fish tank to get unplugged, the filter, and all of my beautiful fish died. And it was such a traumatic experience for me. I know I went on a little tangent with my own story there, but story for another one of these videos. But if you ever feel unsafe, please try to get out of the situation. I can't wait to read some of your stories, even though I'm sorry in advance that you went through anything like this, but I will see you in my very next video. Bye.